Every one of us is a consumer. We buy food at the supermarket, sign contracts with phone companies, and use services every day. Most of the time, these transactions are fair. But what happens when something goes wrong? Imagine you or your client purchases a new washing machine. After 2 weeks, it stops working and floods your apartment. The company refuses to repair it, saying the warranty does not apply. Or consider a television commercial that promises a miracle health drink, but the product has no scientific proof and may even be harmful. Situations like these are why consumer protection law exists. Its purpose is to make sure consumers are treated fairly and businesses are held accountable. It deals with defective products, misleading advertising, unfair contract terms, and fraud. In this lesson, we will explore the key language lawyers need to advise clients, explain rights, and handle disputes in consumer law. We will use new grammar structures, conditionals, and the passive voice to explain rights, duties, and consequences clearly in English. By the end of today's lesson, you'll be able to use precise vocabulary for consumer law, including terms like consumer rights, misleading advertising, warranty, product liability, unfair contract terms, recall, consumer fraud, and regulator. Explain the duties that businesses owe to their customers and the rights customers have when things go wrong. Use conditionals to describe legal consequences. If a product is defective, the consumer can demand a refund. Unless the company provides a warranty, the contract may be unfair. And you will use the passive voice to explain rights and duties. The warranty was provided by the seller. False advertising is prohibited under the law. And apply legal phrases like protect consumers, provide a warranty, recall defective products, and enforce consumer rights. This lesson gives you the tools to talk about everyday legal issues that affect millions of people while using accurate and professional legal English. Let's begin with a real world style story. A customer buys a brand new smartphone. After just 1 week, the phone overheats and burns her hand. Shocked and injured, she contacts the company. Instead of apologizing, the company replies, "It's not our fault. You must have used the phone incorrectly. The warranty doesn't apply." Confused, hurt, and frustrated, the customer turns to her lawyer and asks, "What are my rights? Can I demand a replacement? Should the company recall the product? What can I do if they refuse?" This scenario highlights the central issues in consumer law: the rights of consumers, the duties of companies, and the role of regulators. It also shows how disputes often begin with something small, a broken product, a false promise, but can grow into legal cases that affect thousands of people. Throughout this lesson, we will learn the vocabulary, grammar, and phrases to explain these situations, just as a lawyer would to their client or in court. Consumer rights are the basic legal protections people have when they buy goods or use services. These rights ensure that buyers are treated fairly, products are safe, and services are delivered as promised. For example, consumers have the right to receive safe products. Consumer rights usually include the right to safety, the right to information, the right to choose, and the right to be heard. In many countries, laws also give consumers the right to refunds, repairs, or replacements if something goes wrong. Imagine a family buys a new car. After 1 month, the brakes fail because of a manufacturing defect. The lawyer explains, you have consumer rights. You can demand that the company repair the defect or replace the car. These rights shift the balance of power. Instead of leaving consumers helpless against big companies, the law creates clear obligations. Knowing how to explain consumer rights in English is essential when advising clients, writing contracts, or discussing disputes. Misleading advertising happens when a company makes false or deceptive claims to sell a product or service. This can include exaggerating benefits, hiding risks, or using language that confuses the customer. For example, the company was fined for misleading advertising. A common example is a food label that says 100% natural when the product contains artificial chemicals. Another example is a mobile phone provider promising unlimited internet, but in reality, slowing down the speed after a certain limit. Imagine a consumer asks, "The advertisement said the medicine would cure my pain instantly, but it didn't work. Do I have a case?" The lawyer replies, "Yes. If the company's claim was false, this may be misleading advertising, and regulators can take action. Consumer protection law requires that advertising must be clear, truthful, and not misleading. Lawyers often explain this rule to businesses. You must ensure that all claims are accurate. Otherwise, you risk fines, lawsuits, or reputational damage, which is why you'll see with legal English, we don't advertise, you'll be fluent in legal English in 5 days. A warranty is a company's legal promise to repair or replace a product if it turns out to be defective. Warranties are important because they give consumers confidence that the product will work as advertised. For example, the product came with a 2-year warranty. There are two types: express warranties, which are written or spoken promises like 1 year free repair, and implied warranties, which exist automatically by law, like the guarantee that a product is fit for its normal purpose. Imagine a customer buys a refrigerator. After 6 months, it stops cooling. The company refuses to help. The lawyer explains. The warranty applies. The company must repair or replace the fridge. Warranties are often written into contracts, so lawyers must be precise in drafting and explaining them. A clear warranty protects both consumers and businesses. It assures buyers of fairness and limits disputes when products fail. Product liability is the legal responsibility companies have when their defective products cause harm. It ensures that consumers can claim compensation if a product is unsafe or fails to meet standards. For example, the manufacturer was sued under product liability law. Product liability may apply to manufacturers, distributors, or sellers. It covers cases where a product has a design defect, a manufacturing defect, or inadequate warnings. Imagine a toy contains small parts that are not labeled as dangerous. A child chokes on the toy. The parents sue the company. The lawyer explains this is product liability. The company failed to warn about the risks and is legally responsible. In many legal systems, product liability is strict. This means the consumer does not need to prove negligence, only that the product was defective and caused harm. Understanding product liability helps lawyers explain why companies must invest in safety, testing, and accurate labeling. It protects consumers and pressures businesses to act responsibly. Unfair contract terms are clauses in agreements that give businesses an unreasonable advantage over consumers. These terms may limit the consumer's rights or create excessive obligations. For example, the court struck down the unfair contract terms. For instance, a gym contract might say, "You must pay for a full year, even if you cancel after 1 month. Another example is a software license that allows the company to change the price at any time without notice. Imagine a consumer asks, "My phone company increased the monthly fee without warning. Can they do that?" The lawyer explains no. That may be considered an unfair contract term, and consumer law protects you from it. Courts often have the power to declare unfair terms invalid, meaning they cannot be enforced against the consumer. Lawyers must review contracts carefully and explain which clauses may be challenged as unfair. This concept balances power in agreements where consumers often have little choice or bargaining strength. Recalls can be voluntary when a company decides to act responsibly, or mandatory when a government regulator orders it. For example, the company issued a recall of 5,000 cars due to brake problems. Recalls are common in industries like automobiles, food, electronics, and medicine. They usually involve notifying consumers, repairing or replacing the product, and sometimes offering refunds. Imagine a car manufacturer discovers that the airbag system in one model does not work properly. The company recalls the cars, sending letters to customers and offering free repairs. The lawyer explains this is a recall. The company must act to protect consumers from harm. Recalls are essential because they show how law and business work together to reduce risks. For lawyers, explaining recall procedures is important when advising both consumers and companies. Consumer fraud happens when a company or individual deceives customers for financial gain. It can involve false promises, scams, or intentional misrepresentation. For example, the regulator investigated a case of consumer fraud. Forms of consumer fraud include pyramid schemes, fake investment opportunities, online shopping scams, or companies charging for services never delivered. Fraud may also occur when businesses hide important information, like failing to disclose that a loan has very high hidden fees. Imagine a consumer receives an email offering a luxury holiday at a very low price. They pay in advance, but the company disappears. The lawyer explains this is consumer fraud. The seller never intended to provide the service. Consumer protection law makes fraud illegal and gives regulators the power to investigate, fine, and sometimes shut down dishonest businesses. For lawyers, it is important to distinguish between fraud and simple mistakes. Fraud requires intentional deception. Learning how to explain this difference in English is key for consumer law practice. A regulator is a government body that enforces consumer protection laws and supervises companies to ensure fair practices. Regulators can issue fines, investigate complaints, and order recalls. For example, the regulator fined the company for false advertising. Different countries have different regulators. In the US, agencies like the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, or Food and Drug Administration, FDA, act as regulators. In the EU, it might be the national consumer agencies or the European Commission. Imagine a cosmetics company advertises that its cream cures skin diseases. Consumers complain when it, of course, fails. The regulator investigates, fines the company, and bans the misleading ad. The lawyer explains the regulator has the power to enforce consumer protection laws and protect the public. For lawyers, knowing how to talk about regulators in English is essential, whether advising companies on compliance or explaining to clients how they can report misconduct. Conditionals are very common in legal English because laws and contracts often depend on situations. The first conditional uses if plus present followed by will, can, or may. It describes real situations and their likely consequences. For example, if a product is defective, the consumer can request a refund. Or if the company breaks the contract, it will face legal action. If advertising is misleading, the regulator may impose a fine. Notice how the conditional creates a clear link between the condition and the legal result. Imagine a client asks, "What happens if my washing machine stops working after 1 month?" The lawyer replies, "If your product is defective, the company must repair or replace it." And compare normal advice. The company should replace the product. Conditional legal rule. If the product is defective, the company must replace it. Conditionals help lawyers sound precise and logical when describing consumer rights and company duties. They explain not only the rule, but also the situation in which the rule applies. Two other useful conditional forms in consumer law are unless and in case. Unless means except if. It sets an exception to the rule. For example, unless the company provides clear terms, the contract may be unfair. This means the only way to avoid unfairness is by giving clear terms. In case is used for preparation. For example, in case of defective goods, consumers should keep the receipt. Here, the receipt is not always needed, but keeping it is good preparation for possible problems. Imagine a lawyer advises a client, "Unless you read the small print, you may miss unfair terms. In case your product breaks, you should keep the invoice as proof of purchase." Compare. If focuses on real consequences. If the product is unsafe, it will be recalled. Unless focuses on exceptions. Unless the company repairs the defect, it will face penalties. In case focused on preparation. In case of fraud, consumers should report immediately. These structures allow lawyers to explain obligations and exceptions clearly, especially when discussing contracts or consumer remedies. The passive voice is one of the most common structures in legal English, especially in consumer protection. Why? Because the focus is on the action or the rule, not on who performs it. Examples: consumer rights are protected under the law. The warranty was provided by the seller. False advertising is prohibited. Notice that the agent, the company, the regulator, the court is often not mentioned. The emphasis is on the legal duty itself. Imagine a contract says the goods must be delivered within 30 days. This is passive. The contract does not say who delivers. The focus is on the duty to deliver. Now, let's look at a story. A consumer asks, "Who protects my rights?" The lawyer replies, "Your rights are protected under national consumer law." The passive makes the rule sound official, objective, and impersonal. Compare the active version. The company must repair defective products. Passive, defective products must be repaired. The meaning is similar, but the passive highlights the rule rather than the actor. This is why legal texts, regulations, and contracts almost always use the passive voice. To protect consumers means to make sure that people are treated fairly and not harmed when they buy goods or services. Consumer protection laws exist in almost every country, and they create duties for companies and rights for buyers. For example, the new law was introduced to protect consumers. This protection covers many areas: safe products, honest advertising, fair contract terms, and access to remedies. It also includes preventing fraud and scams. Imagine a government introduces new rules for online shopping. The lawyer explains these regulations protect consumers by requiring clear prices, refund rights, and secure payment systems. For lawyers, the phrase protect consumers is powerful because it shows the purpose of the law. It's not just about regulating business, it's about safeguarding the public. This phrase is often used by regulators, judges, and lawyers to describe why a law or decision exists. To provide a warranty means that the seller or manufacturer gives a formal promise that the product will work properly and that they will repair or replace it if it is defective. For example, the company provided a 1 year warranty for the laptop. Warranties are an essential part of consumer protection because they give buyers confidence. A company that provides a warranty is legally committing itself to take responsibility if something goes wrong. And imagine a customer buys a washing machine. It breaks after 2 weeks. The lawyer explains the company must provide a warranty. This means they must repair or replace the machine free of charge. For lawyers, the phrase provide a warranty often appears in drafting, advising clients, and litigating disputes when companies refuse to honor their promises. To recall defective products means that a company withdraws unsafe or faulty goods from the market to prevent harm to consumers. For example, the manufacturer recalled defective products after accidents were reported. Recalls can be voluntary when a company acts to avoid harm, or mandatory when a regulator orders the recall. They're common in industries like cars, food, medicine, and electronics. Imagine this: a car model has faulty airbags. After accidents are reported, the manufacturer recalls thousands of cars, offering free repairs. The lawyer explains the recall protects consumers and reduces legal liability for the company. The phrase recall defective products is widely used in legal English when discussing corporate responsibility. For lawyers, it is important to explain both the company's duty to act and the consumer's right to safety. Recalls show how consumer protection law balances business interests with public welfare. To enforce consumer rights means to make sure that the protections written in the law are actually applied in real life. Rights are only useful if they can be enforced through regulators, courts, or legal action. For example, the court enforced consumer rights in the case of unfair contract terms. Enforcement may happen in many ways. A regulator may fine a company. A court may order compensation. Or a consumer may file a claim. Imagine a customer's credit card is charged hidden fees. The lawyer explains you have rights, but they mean little unless you enforce them. We can take the case to court or file a complaint with the regulator. The phrase enforce consumer rights highlights the active role of lawyers, courts, and regulators. It connects legal theory with legal practice, turning words in a law into real protection for people. Unfair commercial practices include misleading advertising, hidden fees, or aggressive sales tactics. For example, a company may advertise a product as free but add expensive hidden charges. Consumer protection laws ban such practices to keep markets fair. Lawyers explain if a practice confuses or pressures buyers unfairly, it is unlawful. A consumer contract is an agreement between a business and a customer. Examples include gym memberships, online purchases, or phone service contracts. Consumer law requires these contracts to be written clearly, without unfair terms. For instance, a clause saying The company may raise prices anytime without notice, could be invalid. Lawyers must help clients identify when a contract respects or violates consumer protection rules. Small claims courts let consumers resolve simple disputes quickly and cheaply. They usually deal with lower value cases, such as defective goods or refund claims. For example, if a shop refuses to refund a broken television, the consumer may file in a small claims court. Lawyers explain that this system saves time and avoids expensive litigation. A class action is when many consumers with the same complaint join together in one lawsuit. This is common in cases of defective products or mass fraud. For example, thousands of car owners may sue a manufacturer for faulty brakes, like the story before. Class actions give consumers collective power, making it possible to challenge large corporations effectively. Let's finish with a complete story that shows how consumer protection works in practice. A car manufacturer releases a new model. Within a few months, drivers report that the brakes sometimes fail. Several accidents occur, and consumers complain to both the company and the national regulator. At first, the company denies responsibility, but as more cases appear, it becomes clear that the defect is real. The regulator begins an investigation. Under pressure, the manufacturer issues a recall. Thousands of cars are called back for repair. Here, we can use the passive voice. The cars were recalled, the defect was confirmed, consumer rights were protected. Not every customer is satisfied. Some want compensation for injuries and damages. Lawyers explain their options. If the recall does not fully solve the problem, consumers can file claims individually in small claims court. Unless the company offers fair settlements, a class action may be started. Eventually, a group of consumers joins together in a lawsuit. The court enforces consumer rights, orders the company to pay damages, and ensures safer cars in the future. This story combines everything we learned today: consumer rights, misleading conduct, warranties, recalls, regulators, conditionals for legal consequences, the passive voice for rights and duties, and legal phrases like protect consumers and enforce rights. Let's review what we covered in today's lesson on consumer protection law. First, we learned key vocabulary: consumer rights, misleading advertising, warranty, product liability, unfair contract terms, recall, consumer fraud, and regulator. These terms give you the language to describe both the rights of buyers and the duties of businesses. Second, we focused on grammar, conditionals. If a product is defective, the consumer can request a refund. Unless the company provides clear terms, the contract may be unfair. In case of defective goods, keep the receipt. And also, we learned the passive voice. Consumer rights are protected under the law. False advertising is prohibited, and the warranty was provided by the seller. Third, we practice legal phrases: protect consumers, provide a warranty, recall defective products, enforce consumer rights. These are the tools lawyers use to explain remedies and obligations. And fourth, we explored key concepts: unfair commercial practices, consumer contracts, small claims court, and class actions. Each shows how consumer law operates in practice. And finally, we saw everything come together in a wrap up story about a car recall, where conditionals, passive voice, and legal phrases explained how consumer rights were enforced. Now you can explain consumer protection law clearly and confidently.